Hi, my name is Tashi, and this is Beauty in the Bar. So today I'm going to continue with the How to Get into Law School series, and I'm going to continue with the personal statement. Previously we went over LSAT and GPA, and now we're going over the personal statement, which is generally considered the third most important part of your application. This is the part of your application where an admissions officer can really get to know you. And so you want to make sure that your personal statement is personal, but not too personal. So the first thing you need to know is you have to follow the guidelines that are set out for you for the personal statement. If the personal statement says it needs to be 500 words, do not write more than 500 words. If it says it needs to be 2 pages double space, do not write more than 2 pages double space. Don't try to be clever. Don't try to be tricky. Your application will be compared against a number of applications. It's going to be very obvious if you do something strange. So make sure you stick with those guidelines. Some admissions officers I've heard say that if an application or a personal statement is over the limit, they will just stop reading. So they will get to the 500th word and they will just stop right there. And that can really damage your chances. It can also look bad because it looks like you just don't know how to follow simple directions. So make sure if there is some guideline that you stick to that guideline. On the other hand, if there's no guideline, make sure you take advantage of the extra space, but don't go crazy. Nobody wants to read a novel about you, or, well, maybe someone wants to read a novel about you. I don't know your life, but make sure you're not writing a novel. Keep it within 1,000 words, not something that anyone's going to have to drag themselves through. You have to remember that these admissions officers are people too, and they're having to read through hundreds of pages of personal statements, and they don't want to have to get to the end of yours and feel tired. You want someone to feel excited about you by the end of the personal statement. So just make sure you're picking a length that isn't too crazy. I would say definitely no more than 1,000 words, even if there is no particular word length. The first thing you're going to want to do as far as writing your personal statement is to pick a topic. I suggest that you start thinking about topics really early on. I would say by the summer of your junior year, you should start trying to think up topics. And you should talk to the people in your life. You'd be surprised what ideas come from your different friends and family members who know you really well and might think of things that you hadn't that you might want to talk about yourself. You want to pick something that's going to really help people get to know you, that if you had a chance to sit down with an admissions officer, you would want to tell them and you think would really illuminate who you are as a person. If you were going to make a video on YouTube, for instance, and you were going to give the backstory of your life, you maybe would talk about that. Sometimes it helps to get really deep and talk about things that are extremely personal to you. But again, make sure it's not too personal. We don't want to hear any stories that you couldn't tell in an interview. So just be very, very cautious that you're not moving from personal to inappropriate. You should go through several topics. I think I went through probably 8 topics before I finally landed on mine. And some of them were pretty good. Some of them were terrible. And, you just have to go through that writing process. You have to keep picking things until you land on something that's really hitting with a lot of people. So you have to be very open about this process. The more people you talk to, the better chance you're going to have of someone enjoying your essay and enjoying your topic, because you never know who's going to be reading your topic. So you want to get a diverse perspective on it. One pitfall that you really want to stay away from when you're writing your personal statement is repeating information from your resume. The admissions officers have your resume, they have your GPA, they do not need to hear it repeated. They don't want to hear, I started out at Howard University, and while I was at Howard University, I did this internship. And then the next summer I did the next internship. And these are the activities that I did. And then, now I want to get into your law school. That's, for one, super boring. And, they're going to read 100 applications like that, 100,000, however many applications like that. They don't need to see one more. But also, you're really giving up an opportunity to talk about something that is, a little bit more interesting about you. That's really going to grab people's attention and say, hey, this person seems like they're really going to go on to do something special. I want them to do that under the name of my school. Another pitfall you cannot fall into is getting a little bit too creative with the format. Again, you want to stick to guidelines, but don't try anything too strange. I've read some admissions essays of friends and, members of the legal fraternity that I'm a member of. And for instance, I saw one essay which, mind you, this person ended up writing a lovely essay and getting into a great law school ultimately. But one of their first drafts, they drafted as a recipe, like the recipe of themselves. And I could see how that would be an interesting idea, but on paper, it just looks strange. It limits the amount of words that you can use to say what you're going to say. You want the topic and your writing to speak really for themselves and not to have to use a gimmick. Some people might really like it, but it can be really off-putting to others, and you really can't take that chance because you never know who's going to be reading this. For instance, at Yale, as far as I understand it, applications, are reviewed by the admissions office, but also by 3 randomly chosen professors. So they're going to read your personal statement, they're going to rank it, and, you could get a professor that is, super fun and easygoing and thinks the recipe idea is so cool and such a breath of fresh air. Or you get a professor that's really old school, really conservative, really traditional, and thinks that it looks pretty silly and childish. So you just have to be super careful and make sure that you're really, for lack of a better word, just staying inside the box. Another important thing to do is get samples. If you know that that other people have been admitted to the school, you should really ask them for samples of different essays that have resulted in admission. Often if there's an affinity group that you belong to, for instance, if you're LGBT, if you are a person of color, if you are an older person in law school, sometimes those particular types of affinity groups will collect different personal statements among each other and will have, packets ready for you to help you. So, reach out to those affinity groups, say, hey, I'm looking to apply to your school. I think your group is really interesting. Do you have any tips? Do you have any pointers? Do you have any examples of successful essays? Because, looking at the essays that have gotten people admitted is going to be a great tool for you to kind of figure out the right topic, figure out how to structure your essay. Just look at tons of samples, and there are many available online, but you're going to do best to try to get them from some of the types of schools that you're applying to. So once you've sat down and picked a topic and finally spoken to people and you're really on the right path, I would recommend just starting to write the topic. Don't write the full essay. Don't get too attached, because often what people can do is really get stuck in a particular mindset and get really attached to a particular sentence or word or paragraph or concept. And the essay could be stronger if that was removed, but they've written the entire essay. They think it's this beautiful, finished, polished product, and you want to make it as good as you possibly can. But maybe try writing 200 words or 300 words. Leave room for new opportunity, new ideas to come from the people that you are getting ideas from and that are reviewing your personal statement. Write a couple of topics. Start out with this one, start out with that one, see which one's stronger, see which one you have more to say about, and start there. But once you finally have a full draft and you know that this is the topic that you're choosing, let everyone read it. Like, beg everyone to read it. You want an acquaintance to read it because you want to see what they learn about you. You want a stranger to read it, like someone you've maybe had a class with but never actually spoken to see what impression they get of you. You want your best friend to read it to see if it's, an accurate portrayal of you, if there's something that they have to add. You want a family member to read it, someone who's known you since you were a baby that can really add some color and some depth to whatever you're talking about. You want a professor to read it, or a boss, someone that knows you professionally and can give a perspective on, what they've learned about you and how that fits in with your professional image. You want to give it to someone who's a really great editor so that they can get down into the details of the grammar, the spelling, the syntax, the wordplay that can make the essay really exciting. So yeah, you really want to show it to everyone. And then, after a couple of drafts, after you've kind of chosen which comments you're going to incorporate and which comments maybe you disagree with and you're not necessarily going to go with, get your finished polished draft and ask someone or multiple people to look at it just for spelling and grammar. Just be very clear with them that you are no longer in the substantive writing process and that you are looking for editing, because at some point you're really going to have to just stop drafting and submit your essay. I think that, I pretty much stopped drafting when I thought to myself, I would rather just not get into this school than have to draft another draft of this essay. Like I've done it so many times that I would literally rather just not get in. And that's the point at which you probably should just say to yourself, okay, I think we're good. I think it's time to finish up, do the cleanup process, and call it a day. So just as a final pro tip, which is something that I don't know, just thought of after talking to different people, is that you could ask an admissions officer at a law school to review your essay. I went to a couple of LSAC conferences, and if you don't know what those are, just go ahead and hit a quick Google search. They happen typically in major cities at law schools. Admissions officers will show up and they will talk to students that they think are particularly interesting. They'll give out fee waivers, they'll give out packets, pamphlets, information. They're really scouting for some of the top students. So attending those events is good because you want to meet admissions officers, not necessarily because they're going to like you and therefore admit you. I mean, at the end of the day, they have a job to do, and someone you just met is not going to admit you if you don't have the credentials. Someone who loves you might not even admit you if you don't have the credentials, because the reality is, in some ways, it's a numbers game. But you can get a sense of how they think, what they're looking for. You can ask them questions. And, if you do build up a rapport and if you ask early enough, sometimes you can get a very nice admissions officer to review your personal statement before you submit it. Now, admissions officers will not review your statement if you plan on applying to their school, because that is going to be, a conflict of interest. They can't make it better and then review it in their packet. If you know you're not going to apply to a particular school, you can ask an admissions officer if they will review your essay, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes they'll say yes. I had 2 admissions officers who were so wonderful and reviewed my essay. I will say that if you're going to do that, you need to do it very early, because by the time August rolls around of the year that you're applying, they're not going to have time. Applications, their real applications that are, their real job are going to start rolling in, and they're not going to want to look at one more application. You really need to get it in very early on in the summer or even the year before, and just say, hey, I'm not submitting this anytime soon, but can you let me know what you think? Because that can be some really, really helpful feedback. That's about all I have to say about the personal statement. I mean, you really just have to get a lot of feedback, be really open, and put a lot of effort into it. Start early and often. This is not something you want to write at the last minute. It's not something you want to sort of keep to yourself. You want to make sure that you're getting it into the best shape it possibly can be before you submit it, so it can be a really strong part of your application. So if you have any questions about this, please leave them down below. If you liked this video or you found it helpful, please go ahead and like this and subscribe for more videos. I'm going to go ahead and continue with the How to Get Into Law School series, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.